kicked out into the cold by her foster family, until the Italian Mafia boss found her in the snow was coming down in sheets when the door closed behind me. Not slammed. That would have been almost better. A slam contains heat, contains the energy of someone who still feels something about you. The door closed the way you close a cabinet you are finished with. Quietly. Finally. With the complete indifference of someone who has made a decision and does not require the drama of emphasis to make it real. I stood on the porch of the Whitmore house with a black garbage bag containing everything I owned, and I watched my breath make clouds in the December air, and I thought, with the specific clarity that comes when everything has been stripped away, and only the bare fact of your own existence remains, I thought, this is it. This is the thing that was always coming. I am Maya Collins. I am 19 years old. I have been in the foster care system since I was 7 years old, which means I have spent 12 years learning the specific mathematics of belonging, how much of yourself to offer, how much to withhold, how to read a room for signs of how long you have, how to pack quickly and quietly, how to say goodbye to places, and people with the efficiency of someone who has learned that attachment is a luxury she cannot afford. The Whitmores were my fourth placement. I had come to them at 16, which in the foster system is already late. Older children are harder to place, harder to love, harder to pretend, are blank slates that will become whatever the new family needs them to be. Mrs. Whitmore had seemed warm at first. She had a round face, and she baked things on Sundays, and she called me honey in the first week in a way that did something dangerous to the place in my chest where hope lives. Mr. Whitmore was quieter. He watched things. He watched me the way some people watch weather, not with affection, but with the calculation of someone assessing whether a system is going to cause problems. They had 2 biological children. Brody, 17, who occupied the specific social space of a boy who has always been the center of his family's universe, and knows it with the casual certainty of someone who has never had to fight for warmth. And Cassidy, 15, who was pretty and sharp, and had decided within the first week of my arrival that whatever I was going to be in this family, I was not going to be above her. For 3 years, I had navigated this house with the careful precision I had learned across 4 placements and 12 years. I did my homework at the kitchen table so they could see I was working. I helped with dishes without being asked. I stayed out of Brody's way. I stayed especially out of Cassidy's way, which was harder because Cassidy had a talent for manufacturing proximity to conflicts she had engineered from a distance. I had a part-time job at a diner 3 blocks from the high school. I had been saving money carefully, consistently, with the focused intention of someone who understands that the system that holds her has an expiration date, and that expiration date is 18. I had turned 18 7 months ago. I had 1 more semester of high school. I had asked, carefully, gratefully, with every ounce of the gratitude performance that the system teaches you is the rent you pay for existing in someone else's home, if I could stay through graduation. Mrs. Whitmore had said yes. In June, when the asking felt theoretical and the answer cost nothing. In December, it apparently cost something after all. The specific sequence of events that led to me standing on the porch with a garbage bag at 9:30 on a Tuesday night in a December blizzard began with Cassidy's bracelet and ended with a lie so clean and so complete that I still, standing in the snow, could not find the edge of it where the truth should have been. The bracelet was silver with a small charm, a horseshoe, for luck, which struck me as ironic given how the evening was going. Cassidy had left it on the bathroom counter on Sunday morning. I had seen it there. I had not touched it because I had learned across 12 years that the first rule of occupying borrowed spaces is, you do not touch things that are not yours. On Monday evening, Cassidy had come to me in the kitchen while I was washing dishes and told me, with the specific pleasantness of someone delivering a verdict they have been looking forward to, that her bracelet was missing and that she knew I had taken it. I told her I hadn't. She smiled. The smile of someone who knows the outcome of an argument before it begins because she controls the variables. Mrs. Whitmore came in from the living room. The conversation that followed had the structure of a trial in which the verdict had been determined before the proceedings began. Cassidy cried real tears or something that looked enough like them to function the same way. Mr. Whitmore appeared. Brody appeared. I stood at the kitchen sink with dish soap on my hands, and I explained, clearly and without panic, that I had not taken the bracelet, that I had seen it on the bathroom counter Sunday morning, that it was probably still somewhere in the bathroom. Mr. Whitmore went and checked the bathroom. He came back with the bracelet in his hand. For one moment, one single moment, I felt the specific relief of someone whose truth has been physically confirmed. It was in Maya's room, he said. On her windowsill. I stared at him. That's not, I started. I think, Mrs. Whitmore said, in the voice she used when she had made a decision and was presenting it as a conclusion, that we need to talk about whether this arrangement is still working. The arrangement, 3 years of my life. The closest thing to stability I had known since I was 7 years old. An arrangement. The conversation that followed, if you could call it a conversation, which implies that both parties are speaking and both parties are being heard, lasted 40 minutes. At the end of it, Mrs. Whitmore told me that given everything, given the situation, given that I was now legally an adult, she thought it would be best if I found somewhere else to stay. Tonight, I want you to sit with that word. Tonight, not next week, not after Christmas, not after graduation, which was 6 weeks away. Tonight. 9:30 p.m. in a blizzard in December, 19 years old, with a garbage bag and $412 in my bank account. I had asked for 1 week, just 1 week to find somewhere to go. Mrs. Whitmore had looked at Mr. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore had looked at the wall. I think it's better for everyone if it's tonight, she said, so I packed my bag. It didn't take long. I had been packing quickly my whole life. And the door closed behind me with the quietness of a cabinet being shut, and I stood in the snow, and I breathed, and I did not cry because I had learned a long time ago that crying in the cold just makes you colder. If you are still with me, if this opening has already reached somewhere inside you, please subscribe to this channel before we go a single word further. We tell the stories that need to be told. Drop your name and your city in the comments right now. People are watching this from every corner of this country and the world, and every single name matters. Now, back to Maya, back to the snow. Because what happens next is not what you expect. I walked. There was not a plan. Plans require options and options require resources, and I was doing the math in real time, and the math was $412, December, a blizzard, no family, no friends with space, a phone with 40% battery that I needed to protect because it was my only connection to any kind of help. I had a friend from school named Destiny who lived with her grandmother in an apartment 20 minutes away. I texted her. 3 minutes later, she called me back, and her voice had the specific quality of someone who wants to help and cannot and knows both things simultaneously. My grandma won't, Maya, she just can't. The apartment is so small and she's not well, and she already said, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. It's okay, I said. I'm okay. I was not okay. I called the number for the county housing assistance line. I had looked it up once, 3 months ago, in a moment of preparedness that felt excessive at the time, and now felt like the most rational thing I had ever done. The line rang 7 times and went to a recording that told me the office was closed and would reopen at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. It was Tuesday. 8 a.m. was 10.5 hours away. I had passed a 24-hour diner 4 blocks back. I turned around and went back to it because a diner at 9:30 p.m. in a blizzard was warm and would not ask me why I was alone with a garbage bag, which is the specific social grace of diners. They hold people without requiring explanations. I ordered coffee. The coffee was $2.25. I did the math. $412 divided by $2.25. I stopped doing the math because it wasn't useful and the warmth of the coffee was more useful. I sat in that booth for 2 hours. The waitress, a woman named Rosa with tired eyes and the specific efficiency of someone who has been on her feet since morning, refilled my cup twice without being asked, and did not once look at my garbage bag with the expression that would have told me I needed to leave. I will remember Rosa for the rest of my life. At 11:45, a man sat down across from me. I looked up. He was Italian, I registered, not from his appearance alone, though that was part of it, but from something in his bearing. The specific quality of a man who has been shaped by a particular culture's relationship with authority and family, and the weight of both. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair going silver at the temples and eyes that were the specific color of deep water, not warm, not cold, just very present and very old in the way that some people's eyes are old regardless of the age of the face around them. He wore a coat that cost more than my monthly foster care stipend, and he wore it the way people wear expensive things when they have always had them, without awareness of them. He was alone. He had not been in the diner when I arrived. You've been here for 2 hours, he said. His voice was low and even, accented very slightly with something European. You have 1 bag, it's midnight in a blizzard, and you are doing mathematics on a napkin. He looked at the napkin in front of me where I had in fact been doing calculations. Are you in trouble? No, I said. He looked at me. Yes, I said. He did not move. He did not perform concern. He simply sat across from me with the patient attention of someone who has decided to be here and will wait for whatever comes next. How old are you? He said. 19. Family? No. He was quiet for a moment. Where were you before you came here? I looked at him. He was a stranger in a diner at midnight, and I had $412 and nowhere to go, and the specific calculating desperation of a 19-year-old who has spent her whole life assessing strangers for danger and safety, and is doing it now, and the assessment was complicated. He did not look like danger. He looked like weight, like someone who carries significant things and is accustomed to the carrying. Foster home, I said, until tonight. Something moved across his face. Not pity, I had seen pity my whole life and I knew its shape. This was something else, something more like recognition. You need a place to stay, he said. I'm not, I started. I'm not offering you anything inappropriate, he said, and his voice was the specific, even tone of someone who anticipates this concern and does not fault you for having it. I have a large house with many rooms and a housekeeper who is present at all times, and I am offering you a safe place to sleep for tonight while you sort out what comes next. Nothing more. I looked at him. Why? I said. He was quiet for a moment. Because it's midnight and it's snowing and you are 19 years old with a garbage bag, and I am a person with a large warm house and the capacity to help, and not doing so would be, he paused, looking for the right word, wrong. I don't know you, I said. No, he agreed. My name is Luca Romano. I own several businesses in this city. My housekeeper's name is Maria. She has worked for me for 22 years and will be present tonight and every night. You may leave at any time. I will not prevent you or follow you. You can verify who I am on your phone right now. He said his name again, Luca Romano, and he waited while I looked him up. The search results were extensive. Luca Romano, 42 years old. Chairman of Romano Holdings, a real estate and development company with significant holdings across 3 states. On the board of 2 charitable foundations. A name that appeared in business news with the frequency of someone whose activities were worth covering, and in law enforcement adjacent news with the frequency of someone whose name was known in certain contexts, but against whom nothing had ever been proven. I read the second category of results very carefully. He watched me read them. You know what those say, I said. Yes. And you still think I should come with you. I think you should make an informed decision, he said, which is why I told you my full name and waited while you searched it. A man who wanted to harm you would not do that. This was either the truest thing or the most sophisticated manipulation I had encountered, and I sat with it for 30 seconds, and I looked at Rosa behind the counter, who was watching us with the specific attention of a woman who has learned to pay attention, and I looked at the snow outside the window, and I looked at my phone showing 32% battery and $412. Maria will be there, I said. Maria will be there, he confirmed. And I will give you her personal number before we leave this diner so you can text her directly to confirm. He did. I texted Maria. She responded in 40 seconds with a message that said, Miss, the guest room on the 2nd floor is ready. I have left towels and there is food in the kitchen. You are welcome here. I picked up my garbage bag. I got in his car. I need you to stay with me, because I know what you're thinking and I need you to stay anyway. Because this story is not what it looks like from here. The twist in this story, the thing that happened 6 weeks later, is going to change everything you think you understand about the night in the diner. Subscribe right now. Tell us your name and city in the comments. And stay, because Maya's story is just beginning. The house was, I don't have adequate words. Not because it was a mansion, though it was large, with the kind of effortless scale that comes from old money rather than new, but because it was warm. Not performatively warm, not the arranged warmth of a home staging, not the strategic warmth of the Whitmore house in the first weeks. Deeply, structurally warm, the warmth of a house that has been a home for a long time and has absorbed it. Maria was in the kitchen when we arrived. She was a small Italian woman of perhaps 65, with white hair pinned back and the specific energy of someone who has been running a household with complete competence for decades and finds your arrival a welcome addition to her domain rather than an imposition. She looked at me, at my garbage bag, my wet coat, my carefully composed expression, and she said, "Come, food first, questions later." She made me pasta at 1 in the morning. It was the best thing I had eaten in recent memory, and I ate it at the kitchen island while she sat across from me with tea, and she asked me nothing, and offered me everything, and I thought about all the different kinds of warmth there are and how rarely I had encountered this specific kind, the warmth that requires nothing in return. Luca Romano said good night from the doorway of the kitchen. He did not come in. He looked at me for a moment with those present, old eyes and said, "Sleep. Tomorrow has time for everything else." And he left. I slept in a room with an actual bed, not a cot, not a pull-out with sheets that smelled like lavender and a window that looked out over a snow-covered garden that in the morning light was so beautiful it was almost aggressive. I lay in that bed in the dark and I let myself feel very carefully what the last several hours had contained, and I arrived at the same conclusion I always arrived at. I would handle it. I had been handling things my entire life. I would handle this too. In the morning, I called the county housing line at 8 a.m. exactly. I explained my situation. The woman on the phone was kind and efficient and told me about a transitional housing program for aged-out foster youth that had a waiting list, but that I could be placed on immediately, and about emergency shelter options, and about a nonprofit that specifically served young adults exiting the foster system that had a case manager who could help me navigate options. I wrote everything down. I had always written everything down. I came downstairs with my notebook and my garbage bag, and Luca Romano was at the kitchen table with coffee and a newspaper, and he looked up when I came in. "I have some leads," I said. "Transitional housing, a nonprofit. I'll make calls today and I should be out of your way by—" "Sit down," he said, not unkindly. The tone of someone who has something to say and would prefer to say it with you sitting. I sat. "The transitional housing waitlist," he said, "is typically 3 to 4 months. I stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because I'm on the board of the foundation that funds it," he said simply. He put down his newspaper. "I know the landscape of what's available to young people in your situation in this city. It's part of what I do." He looked at me. "I have a proposal, not a charity, a transaction." I waited. "I need someone to organize my personal library," he said. "It is substantial, and it has been neglected for approximately 4 years since my last assistant left." I also need someone to manage correspondence for my charitable foundation. Nothing confidential, scheduling, communications, basic administrative work. In exchange for this work, you may stay here until you graduate and have secured stable housing. You will be paid a fair wage for the work. Maria is here. You will have privacy and safety. And I will not involve myself in your personal decisions or your plans. I looked at him. Why? I said, for the second time. He was quiet for a moment. He looked at his coffee and then at the window where the snow garden was bright in the morning light. I was not always in the position I am in now, he said. I came to this country when I was 21 with very little. I had people who helped me, not from kindness, from transaction, from mutual benefit. But the help was real regardless of the motive. He looked at me. Consider this a similar arrangement. You work, I provide stability, both of us benefit. What you're describing, I said slowly, is essentially a job. Yes, he said, and a room? Yes, nothing else. Nothing else, he said. You have my word, which I assure you means something. I thought about 6 weeks, about graduation. About the nonprofit case manager I had written down and the wait list and the $412. I thought about Maria's pasta at 1 in the morning and the lavender sheets and the snow garden. I'd need to see the library first, I said, to assess the scope. Something happened at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, the acknowledgement of one. Of course, he said. The library it was the most beautiful room I had ever been in. Floor to ceiling, 3 walls of books, a rolling ladder on a brass rail, a fireplace, 2 leather chairs. Books in English and Italian and some in French. Architecture books and history books and novels and philosophy and poetry, and several complete sections whose organizational logic had, as he said, entirely collapsed. I stood in the doorway of that room and felt something happen in my chest that I had not felt in a long time, something that was not the careful, managed hope I usually allowed myself, but something larger and less cautious, something that recognized home. I'll take the arrangement, I said. I moved into a permanent guest room on the 2nd floor. My garbage bag went into a closet that was larger than the room I had shared with Cassidy for 3 years. Maria showed me where everything was with the proprietary pride of someone showing you a domain she has mastered. Luca Romano gave me a key card for the library, introduced me to his foundation's administrative coordinator by email, and then, true to his word, left me entirely alone to manage my own affairs. I worked. Every day, for 4 hours, I cataloged and organized the library. Not just reorganizing what was there, but building a proper system, cross-referencing, creating a digital index. The work was the most satisfying thing I had done in years, because books had always been the most reliable company of my life. And because the work required exactly the kind of focused, intelligent attention that I had been applying to survival for years and that, turned toward something constructive, felt like finally using a muscle for its intended purpose. I went back to school. I had 6 weeks left of my senior year, and I went every day with the specific determination of someone for whom graduation is not a ceremony but a rescue. The piece of paper that tells the world you completed something, that you made it through something. that you did not disappear. Destiny hugged me in the hallway on my first day back and held on for a long time and said, "I'm so sorry," into my shoulder, and I held her back and said, "It's okay," and meant more of it than I expected. In the evenings, sometimes, Luca Romano was in the library when I came to work. Not always, he traveled frequently, had meetings, had the full and complicated schedule of a man with significant holdings across 3 states. But sometimes he was there, in one of the leather chairs by the fireplace, reading, and we would acknowledge each other, and I would work, and he would read, and the silence was the specific kind that is not uncomfortable because it has nothing to prove. Occasionally, he would ask about the library project. I would show him what I was building, the index, the organizational system, the discoveries I made as I went through the collection. The edition of Dante I found that appeared to be very old, the collection of letters tucked inside a history of Rome that turned out to be correspondence between his grandfather and someone I didn't know. He listened to my reports with focused attention and asked questions that told me he was genuinely engaged rather than performing engagement. One evening, he asked how school was going. I told him, 6 weeks to graduation. I was on track. I had applied to the community college for the spring semester, not my first choice, not my dream, but practical and affordable and a beginning. "What would you study?" he said. "If practical and affordable were not the constraints." I looked at him. The fireplace was going and the library was warm, and outside the snow had stopped for the first time in a week and the garden was still and silver. "Library science," I said, "and literature, and then I'd figure out how to turn both of those into something that helps people." He nodded. "The public library system," he said, "or school libraries, or, I don't know, something with books and people who need them, kids especially." I stopped. "Kids who need somewhere to go that's warm and doesn't require anything from them." He was quiet. "Why kids?" he said. I looked at the fire. "Because I was one," I said, "and the library at my elementary school was the only place I ever went that felt completely safe. The librarian there, Mrs. Patterson, she never looked at me differently because I was a foster kid. She just showed me books." The fire crackled. "Tell me about Mrs. Patterson," he said, so I did. And then I told him about the library at my second placement, which was better stocked, and the one at my third placement, which was across the street from the school and where I had spent every afternoon for a year and a half. And he listened, and the evening got later, and Maria brought tea that neither of us had asked for and left it and went away again, and I talked about books for 2 hours to a man I had met in a diner in a blizzard, and I thought very quietly, very carefully, so as not to frighten it, that this was one of the best evenings of my life. Are you feeling what I'm feeling right now? That warmth, hold on to it, because the next part of this story is going to test it. Something is coming that neither Maya nor anyone watching this story right now has seen coming. Subscribe, drop your city, share this with one person, and stay because the twist changes everything. The Whitmores showed up in the 4th week, not at the house, at my school. Mrs. Whitmore was waiting by the front entrance on a Wednesday morning in her good coat with the expression of someone who has prepared what they are going to say. I saw her from across the parking lot and felt the specific physical response of someone whose nervous system has been conditioned by a threat, a tightening, a heightening, a recalibration. I walked toward her because I had learned that there is no advantage in avoidance with certain people. They are committed to the encounter, and they will create it somewhere worse if you do not let them have it somewhere manageable. "Maya," she said, the same tone as always, the tone that made my name sound like something she was correcting. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said. "She told me that Cassidy had found the bracelet. I waited. It was in her coat pocket," she said. She'd worn the coat to a party and put the bracelet in her pocket and forgotten about it. I looked at her. "I see," I said. "I wanted to," she stopped. "I wanted to tell you that. You drove to my school," I said, "to tell me that Cassidy's bracelet was in Cassidy's coat pocket. And to say that perhaps," she stopped again. "You'd like me to come back," I said. She didn't quite say yes. She said, "We have a responsibility to you, you discharged that responsibility," I said. "In a blizzard. At 9:30 p.m. you told me to leave tonight and I left." "Maya, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset," I said, and I wasn't. I was something cleaner and more complicated than upset. I was clear. "I'm telling you what happened. You made a decision and I respected it. I found somewhere to stay. I'm finishing school. I have plans." I looked at her. "Is there anything else?" She looked at me with an expression I had not seen on her face before, something that was trying to locate itself between regret and relief and was finding neither. "We could help," she said, "with the transition. I have help," I said. "Thank you for coming to tell me about the bracelet." I went inside. I sat in the bathroom for 4 minutes and breathed, not crying, breathing. The specific breathing of someone who has just had an encounter with a defining wound of their life and is choosing not to let it reopen. Then I went to first period. That evening, I told Luca Romano what had happened. Not because I needed to, not because I was reporting or asking permission, but because he was in the library and the evening had settled and the story was sitting in me, and he was someone I had learned, over 4 weeks, would receive it without distortion. He listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "The bracelet was in her pocket," he said. "Yes. And she came to tell you?" "Yes. Not to ask you to come back, to tell you." "She asked too," I said, "but as an afterthought or as a courtesy, I'm not sure which." He was quiet again. "You handled it well," he said. "I've been handling things for a long time," I said. "I know," he said. And the way he said it, not with pity, with the specific acknowledgement of someone who has seen you do it and found it worth noting, landed in a way that was different from how acknowledgement usually landed. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes." "The night in the diner, you had been watching me." He didn't deny it. "You knew who I was," I said, "before you sat down." A pause. "Not who you were," he said, "what you were in." I had been watching the situation for approximately 20 minutes before I sat down. Not you specifically, the situation. "Why were you in that diner at midnight?" "I often work late," he said. "That diner has good coffee and acceptable food and no one there knows who I am or cares." "And you saw a girl with a garbage bag." "I saw a girl doing mathematics on a napkin," he said. "That's what decided me, the mathematics." I looked at him. "What about the mathematics?" "The precision," he said. "You were not panicking, you were calculating. At midnight in a blizzard, having just been put out of your home, you were sitting in a diner running numbers on a napkin. He paused. I found that remarkable. I didn't have the luxury of panicking, I said. No, he said. You never have, that was clear. He looked at me. It's not a small thing, Maya, the not panicking. It's a capacity that most people who have always been safe cannot develop because they have never been required to. You developed it because you had no choice. That's not the same as it being easy, and it's not the same as it being nothing. The fire was low. The library was quiet. Thank you, I said, for the diner. Thank you, he said, for the library. Graduation was on a Saturday in late January. The gymnasium of Jefferson High School was decorated with the specific enthusiasm of a school that does not have a large budget but has significant goodwill. And the bleachers held the families of 214 graduating seniors. And I sat in the second row of the student section in my cap and gown, and I looked at the bleachers. Maria was there. She had insisted. She was wearing her good coat, and she had brought flowers, actual flowers, wrapped in paper, which nobody had ever brought to anything for me before, and she waved when I found her in the crowd with an enthusiasm that was entirely disproportionate to our 4 weeks of acquaintance, and was therefore exactly right. Luca Romano was beside her. I had not expected him. He was in a dark suit, which was slightly overdressed for a high school gymnasium, and he sat with the contained, patient attention he brought to everything. And when I found him in the crowd, he gave me the small nod of acknowledgement that I had come to understand was his version of considerable warmth. I walked across the stage. I shook the principal's hand. I received my diploma, the piece of paper that meant I had made it through, that I had not disappeared, that I was still here and still building. In the parking lot afterward, Maria hugged me with the thoroughness of a woman who does nothing by halves and pressed the flowers into my hands and said something in Italian that I didn't speak but understood completely. And Luca Romano stood beside her and said, "Well done." 2 words. And they contained, I don't know how to explain what they contained. They contained the specific weight of being witnessed by someone who understood the full cost of the thing you had just completed. "Thank you for coming," I said. "We wouldn't have missed it," he said. And the "we" was Maria and him, and was the first time I understood that somehow, over 4 weeks, we had become something that could use that word. We're getting close to the twist now. The part that changes the shape of everything that came before it. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop your name and city in the comments. People are watching this from everywhere and we want to find each other. Share this with one person who needs it. Now, pay attention. Because what Maya finds out in the next section is the thing nobody saw coming, not even me when I first heard this story. The twist came on a Tuesday. I had been in the house for 6 weeks. I had graduated. I was registered for community college. I was on the nonprofit's caseload for transitional housing and the case manager. A woman named Deja, who had the specific efficient compassion of someone who genuinely loves her work, had told me that a studio apartment in a supportive housing complex had opened up, and that with the income I was making from the library work, I qualified, and that I could move in at the beginning of February. It was all working. The plan was executing. The careful mathematics of survival were producing the right numbers. And then I found the file. I was reorganizing the last section of the library, the section that had been stacked rather than shelved, a collection of boxes that had apparently not been opened since the library was last organized 4 years ago. I was going through them systematically, cataloging, when I found a folder that was not a book. It was a manila folder. My name was on it. Not my name as it is now, not Maya Collins, the name given to me in the system when my mother's parental rights were terminated and no other family member was found to claim me. But the name before, the name from before I was 7. The name I had carried for the first 7 years of my life and then lost with everything else. Maya Raso. I sat on the floor of the library with the folder in my hands, and the folder it contained documents. My original birth certificate. My mother's death certificate. She had died when I was 6, the year before I entered the system, and I had known this in the abstract the way you know facts that are too large to fully hold. My father's name, which I had never been told, because the records indicated he was unknown. Except, at the bottom of the folder, a letter, handwritten in Italian with an English translation clipped to it. The letter was from a woman named Giuliana Romano. The letter was addressed to my mother. Her name was Angela. The letter was dated 23 years ago, and it said, in the careful, pained language of someone saying something that costs them everything, that she was sorry. That she had told her son the wrong thing. That she had made a decision that she now believed was a mistake. That the child Angela was carrying was her grandchild, and she would like the chance to know that. I sat on the floor of the library for a very long time. Giuliana Romano. Romano. I looked at the English translation again. I looked at the dates. My mother would have been 19 when she received this letter, my age now. My father would have been 21. The age Luca Romano had said he was when he came to this country. I sat on the floor of that library, and I held the mathematics of the thing I was holding, and it did not add up, and then it added up entirely, and I sat with the weight of it settling into me the way enormous things settle, slowly, irreversibly, changing the landscape they land on. I heard footsteps in the hall. I looked up. Luca Romano stood in the doorway of his library. He saw me on the floor. He saw the folder in my hands. He saw my face. And his face did the thing it almost never did. It broke open. Not dramatically, not a collapse, a fracture. A very controlled fracture that let something through that he had been holding for a very long time. "You found it," he said. I looked at him. "How long?" I said. My voice was very steady, which surprised me. He came into the library. He sat down on the floor. This man in his dark suit in his library sat down on the floor beside me, and he said, "I have been looking for you for 3 years." I waited. "Your mother, Angela, I knew her when we were young, before I came to this country. She and I were," he stopped. "We were young, and we were in love in the way that young people are in love, and my mother did not approve, and she told me things that were not true, about Angela, about what she wanted, about whether," he stopped again. I believed my mother. I shouldn't have. I came to America, and I built things, and I tried to forget, and I did not entirely succeed. "You didn't know," I said, "about me." "I didn't know until 3 years ago," he said. "A cousin in Italy found records Angela had written to my mother after I left. My mother had not told me. She died without telling me." The cousin found the letters and contacted me, and I found the records, and I have been. He looked at the folder in my hands. I have been trying to find you for 3 years. The foster system is not, he stopped. It does not make itself easy to search. No, I said, it doesn't. The night in the diner, I said, you said you'd been watching the situation. I had been trying to find you for 3 years, he said. I knew your age, I knew your approximate location. I had been, yes, I had people trying to locate you. And then a report came back about a girl who matched your description being displaced from a foster home, and I went to the diner because he stopped. Because I had been looking for you for 3 years, and I didn't know how to say that to a stranger in the snow. I looked at the folder, at my name in his handwriting on the tab, Maya Russo. You made the folder, I said. Yes. You put it in the library. I was going to tell you, he said. I wanted you to have time to know me first. Not as this, as a person. I wanted you to be able to decide, with information and with time, and not from the position of being in the snow with a garbage bag. The fire was low in the fireplace. The library was very quiet. You're my father, I said, the words in the air. He looked at me with those deep water eyes, and they were not old now, they were something else, something that had been waiting for a very long time to be allowed. Yes, he said, if you'll permit me to be. I want to tell you what happened next, and what happened after that, and what happened after that, because the story does not end on the floor of the library. What happened next? I did not say anything for a very long time. I sat with the folder in my lap, and I did the mathematics of the last 6 weeks, the diner, the transaction offer, the library work, the graduation, and I looked for deception in it, and I could not find it. Not because I wasn't looking, because it wasn't there. He had not manipulated me into anything. He had offered me stability and work and safety with clear terms, and he had waited for me to come to know him before telling me the rest. He had put the folder in the library where I would find it eventually, which was, I thought about this very carefully, not the choice of a person concealing something. It was the choice of a person letting the truth be findable when the time was right. I want a DNA test, I said. Of course, he said immediately. And I want time, as much as you need. And I'm still going to the transitional housing, I said. I'm not changing my plans because of this. I stopped. I need my plans to be mine. I understand, he said, and I would not have it any other way. I looked at him. You've been sitting on the floor for 10 minutes, I said. Yes. In a suit. Yes. I stopped. The corner of his mouth moved. Undignified. I was going to say human, I said. The DNA test confirmed what the folder suggested. The case manager at the nonprofit was the first person I told, because Deja was a professional who had seen everything and would help me think through what it meant practically, and she did. The transitional housing, I moved in on February 1st. My own studio apartment, small and entirely mine. I painted the wall by the window a color called morning sage, because I had never been allowed to paint a wall before, and because morning and sage were both things I intended more of. Luca Romano I took slower. Because some things cannot be rushed without losing the thing you're trying to build. We had dinner on Sundays at his house with Maria, who had known everything and had made pasta for me at 1 a.m, with the specific warmth of a woman who already knew she was feeding family. We talked about books and about his work and about my courses at the community college where I had declared library science and was thriving in the specific way you thrive when you are finally doing the thing you were built for. He met Deja and approved of her with the quietly intense attention he brought to everything and people he decided were worth trusting. She met him with the professional wariness of a woman whose job is to protect young adults from people who might exploit them, and she revised her wariness over time and not all at once, which was the right way to do it. I called the Whitmore house once. Mrs. Whitmore answered, and I told her briefly and without drama that I was doing well. She said she was glad. There was a long pause in which she might have said more and did not. I did not fill the pause for her. I said goodbye. I thought about Cassidy and her bracelet. I thought about what it must be like to be a person who plants a lie and watches it detonate and does not tell anyone. I thought about the specific weight of that secret, and I felt not forgiveness exactly, because forgiveness is earned and she had not sought it, but something adjacent. A release, not for her sake, for mine, because carrying the weight of what she did was weight I had not agreed to carry, and I set it down. What I carried instead: morning sage walls and library science textbooks and Sunday dinners with Maria's pasta, and a man with deep water eyes who had looked for me for 3 years and had sat on the floor of his library in a suit when the looking was over. Here is what I know now. The system that held me for 12 years, the foster system, the placements, the careful performance of gratitude and smallness and manageability, that system failed me in specific and documented ways. Mrs. Whitmore failed me. Cassidy failed me. The night in the blizzard was a failure of duty and of basic human decency that I will not soften, because softening it would be a disservice to every child still in that system, still performing, still packing quickly and saying goodbye to places that were supposed to be home. And the same life that produced that failure also produced a diner at midnight, and a woman named Rosa who refilled my coffee, and a man who had been looking for me for 3 years and did not know how to say it in the snow, and so offered me a transaction instead, which was the kindest thing available to him in that moment. Both things are true: the failure and the finding. They exist in the same life, and I have had to learn to hold both of them, not to let the failure cancel the finding, and not to let the finding cancel the failure. To hold them both as the full, complicated, unresolved truth of a life that is still being written. I am Maya Collins. I am also Maya Russo. I am 19 years old and I have a studio apartment with a morning sage wall and a library science major and Sunday dinners, and a father who sat on the floor of his library in a suit, and I have, cautiously, provisionally, with the specific careful hope of someone who has learned that hope is not free but is worth the cost, a future that is mine. I am not the garbage bag. I am the girl who did mathematics on the napkin. I am still calculating. And the numbers, for the first time in a very long time, are adding up. That is Maya's story. And if you have stayed for every single word of it, thank you. That means something. This channel exists for the Mayas, for the people who have been handed garbage bags instead of homes, and who did the mathematics anyway and who kept going in the snow. If this story reached you, subscribe right now. Hit the bell. We put out new stories every single week, and every single one is built for the person who needs it most. Drop your name and your city in the comments below. We want to know who is in this room with us. People are watching from New York and Chicago and Atlanta and London and Lagos and Rome, and everywhere in between, and every single comment is read. Share this video with one person today. One person who needs to hear that being found is possible, that the diner at midnight is possible, that the morning sage wall is possible. And next week, we are bringing you the story of a young woman who discovered, on the day she was accepted to her dream university, that the college fund her parents had been building for 18 years had been emptied by the one person she trusted most. What she found in the bank statements, what she did with the truth, what happened in the room where the confrontation finally happened. We're calling it, She Got Into Her Dream School, Then She Found Out Where the Money Went. Set your reminder. You need to be here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And to every child who ever sat in a library and felt safe for the first time, Mrs. Patterson was right about you. You were always worth the book.